everyone. Welcome to another ILSR AAPB webinar, Building Smarter Cities and the Cost of Doing Nothing. I'm Sohn, Associate Director for Communications at ILSR's Community Broadband Networks team, and I will be your co-host for the next 60 minutes. Today, we are going to be joined by a fantastic panel of community broadband champions and smart infrastructure experts. And we're going to explore what it really means to be a smart city, what it takes to build one, and why doing nothing has real cost. Now, we want you to be a part of the conversation. The chat is open. You can drop in your questions, reactions, comments there, and we should also have a bit of time at the end for some Q&A. But before we dive in, let's say hello to our co-host, the real Gigi, Gigi Sohn.
Hi, everybody. I'm Gigi Sohn, the Executive Director of AAPB. And for those of you that don't know AAPB and don't know me, which I'm guessing is not that many of you, we're an organization that is dedicated to ensuring that communities can control their future through ownership of broadband infrastructure. And if you haven't joined, we are a membership organization and we are growing. We just announced that we're having a regional conference in Chattanooga on March 11th and 12th. So I hope you'll join us and more to come on that. So Sean, should I introduce our speakers?
I think you should. I think we've got a great lineup. Tell the folks who's coming.
We do have an amazing lineup. So first we have Stacy Cantrell. She's the Vice President of Engineering at Huntsville Utilities, and that's a Google Fiber partnership. We have Brianna Reed-Harmel, who I've had the pleasure of sitting on panels with, and she's fantastic. She's the Municipal Fiber Manager for Pulse Fiber in Loveland, Colorado. We have Dr. Bento Lobo, who's the Head of Finance and Economics, UC Foundation Professor at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. And everybody knows how Chattanooga EPB is like the North Star for public broadband. And we finally, but last but not least, because we've gotten to know each other, and he is such a fun guy, Paul Dickinson, who's the founder and principal of Smart Infrastructure Solutions, who's going to be talking about fiber sensing technology that is so exciting. And he's so good at explaining it, even I understand it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we're going to structure today's event. We're going to have 4 discussion segments. First, what it means to be a smart city and what infrastructure is needed. Second, what a smart city looks like in practice. Third, the future of smart cities. And 4, the cost of doing nothing. So, and I think that's going to be really, really important. Like, you know, I know this is a tough decision sometimes to own one's own infrastructure, but there are costs to be weighed for not doing this. So let's dive right in and start with what it means to be a smart city. And I'm going to turn it back over to my co-host, Sean.
All right. So, yes, I'm looking forward to this. So let's, as you said, let's start and let's first bring out Huntsville with Stacy Cantrell, the VP of Engineering for Huntsville Utilities. There she is. Stacy, hello, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. Hi, glad to be here. So I'll give you a little history on how we came about and how this partnership came about. But we have been installing fiber. Huntsville Utilities has been building fiber since the 1980s, and this was originally for our SCADA systems. So we're a water, gas, and electric utility. We were building fiber between our buildings to water plants, to electric substations, just to use for our everyday operations and have a communication system that we had control of. So along the way, the city of Huntsville started wanting to get in on it and wanted to use some of the available fiber strands, and in some cases, cost share with us to build out to some police precincts or other things. So we were coordinating and sort of patchworking this infrastructure together. We realized at one point we had over 100 miles of infrastructure that was just kind of built together piece by piece. We had other people, other entities, both government and private entities, starting to ask about trying to leverage our fiber and use any strands that we had available or encourage us to build out certain routes. And we realized we needed to put a strategy around this. How are we going to continue this expansion How are we going to have some kind of a formal lease process? At the same time, our city leadership was really wanting to make Huntsville a smart place. And Gig City was the word back then, and had been talking to a lot of different companies about how to bring more high-speed internet into Huntsville. So it was our city leadership, our mayor, Tommy Battle, actually, that introduced us to Google Fiber, and we started those conversations. And it didn't take long before we settled pretty quickly on the model where Huntsville Utilities would build, own, maintain the infrastructure. As a utility, that's what we're good at. That's what utilities have been doing since we've been created. We build infrastructure and we maintain it 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. So that's what we're good at. We can do what we're good at. Google can do what they're good at. They provide that last mile, or really just to the house infrastructure and the marketing. So it really does leverage our strengths, and has been a great partnership for both of us. As far as positioning Huntsville as a smart city, I mean, it's so multifaceted. There's what I just described about just using high-speed communications to do our normal businesses. And then there's the city using this for improved traffic control, traffic monitoring, leveraging data from cameras, and then just simply having high-speed internet available for creative people and businesses to develop and do what they do best. So,
well, let me ask the next question of you, Stacy. If you were advising another city that's considering this model, what's the one thing you'd tell them to do first?
So first, make sure that you have a good partnership with your city leadership or government leadership. That was really very key to us. And luckily, we already had that great relationship. And that's why the city brought us in and trusted us to implement this. But we've been working closely with our city with economic development pursuits for many, many years. And I think that's been key to Huntsville's development. We're really proud of those relationships. But one thing a huge thing that we got from that is the city was willing to use this network that we were building and to pay for that. So they invested an amount of money into that. So this infusion of cash from people leasing the system, both our government, who made a substantial commitment, Google, who's made a substantial commitment, that's allowed us to be able to continue to expand that fiber. But just they recognize the value of this project from the beginning. They've been leveraging it and are very encouraging and making this available for residents and businesses here. So it's been terrific.
Let me just as follow up. Was it a difficult political argument to make? I mean, did you have to build consensus among, businesses, politicians? Like, how did you build that consensus? Or did you have just your mayor and others were just leaders and they were just like, we have to do this. We're a rocket city, right? We're an aerospace city. We have to do this. We can't not do this. Like, how did you build that political will?
Well, Gigi, you said it very well. I mean, how can we not do this? We're the rocket city. How can we not have the latest in technology available to our residents and our businesses? So it was a lot of a no-brainer. So on that standpoint, it was easy for us. The city was aligned from the beginning. We were already trying to figure out a way to leverage and expand the infrastructure that we had. We knew there was a value to it and it was valuable to others. So a lot of that was very good timing. But then a lot of it, like I said, it was based on good relationships that we had already cultivated.
Right. Well, thank you. I'm going to turn it back over to Sohn.
All right, yeah. Let's bring in Brianna Reed Hamel to the conversation. She is the municipal fiber manager for Pulse Fiber in Loveland, Colorado. How you doing, Brianna?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. So Yeah, so I manage our broadband utility. We're a municipal-owned utility here at the city of Loveland, which is just about an hour north of Denver.
Great.
Your city's built this award-winning city-owned network, and so I'm interested to hear, so we can zero in on the fiber. What role did fiber play in really transforming your city?
That's a really great question. So similar to Huntsville, we've been building out fiber since the 90s that did support of our electric SCADA system. And we actually have our electric utilities in northern Colorado. There's four communities, Fort Collins, Loveland, Longmont, and Estes Park all jointly own our generation and transmission provider. And that entity actually built fiber in between the communities, not just within the city itself. And that has allowed us to leverage that infrastructure, and not just within our community, but also regionally, which has been a huge asset as we built out to leverage partnerships with our neighboring communities, which are also building out municipal fiber.
So I've got a question for you, Brianna. So how did your team ensure digital equity wasn't just an afterthought, but built into the network from the start?
Yeah, so as we were deciding what to do back in 2015, we were struggling with a number of issues within our community. We had huge pockets that were being left unserved by our incumbents, including our entire school district. And I've talked about this in the past, but it was a situation where our schools were actually having to rotate which schools and which classrooms were doing standardized testing at any given time because they just simply did not have enough bandwidth to the schools, and our incumbents were not willing to step up and solve that issue. So our school district was a huge part of the consensus building within our community to do something. The other huge group that was backing this was our business community. So our business community was lacking connectivity, and we were not being able to attract new businesses, high quality businesses, and high quality residents that work at those businesses because we just simply did not have good internet connection to support those. So it was really part of our founding tenets when we were launching our feasibility study.
So a follow-up question on that. Can you share an example where data or connectivity helped to solve a problem that wasn't even on your radar? Like what new and interesting problem popped up that you were able to solve through your network?
Yeah, so I can actually give a couple of different examples. So we actually launched in 2020, right at the peak of COVID or height of COVID as it was starting. And even though we hadn't built out much of our community, we were able to connect a handful of community locations and schools and immediately stand up, pop up learning at locations where you can come in at the library and park your car out in the parking lot and be able to connect. We did that with a number of the schools as well. And so that community partnership was able to immediately affect positively our students who were, stuck at home learning, just doing distance learning. One of the other things that we've been able to do is leverage the infrastructure that we built out to do advanced metering infrastructure, AMI, with our electric and water utilities. So that's been, helping people be more efficient with their energy usage and help bring their bills down because they can actually see real time what they're using.
Can you just 2 seconds talk a little bit about, did you say advanced metering? I kind of missed that.
Yeah, so it's called advanced metering infrastructure. And so for the utility world, that's electronic metering infrastructure, usually on electric meters, but also can be water and gas. And but it basically transmits data 2 directions. So you can get information from the home, and you can display that on a web portal so a customer can actually see what their usage is. But we can also push information to that meter as well, so that we can do signals that we have a peak day and we need you to conserve, or there's we've detected a water leak on your system, and maybe you should look and see if you have a toilet running or a leak in your backyard or something like that. So it's really dynamic, and it's been around for a while, this technology, but it's something that we were able to launch a lot quicker because we didn't have to also build out fiber infrastructure at the same time.
Well, as a person who just was using 10 gallons of water a day and didn't answer my phone when the water company called, I wish we had that in Washington, D.C. So anyway, I'll turn that back over to Sean.
Yes, yes. Now, I think this next segment here is our next guest is going to be very interesting. We're going to bring in Dr. Bento Lobo, who is the head of finance and economics and a professor at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. His work is something that I've referenced quite a bit. We reference quite a bit for years now, actually. And so welcome, Professor. Oh, I think you're muted. I'm still not hearing you. I don't know if anyone else is.
All right, that's good. Sorry about that.
Yep, there we
Sean,
go. There
thanks.
we go.
Nice to be here.
Good. I'm glad that you're here. Now, your research has really quantified the economic impact of EPB fiber in Chattanooga. That's, as Gigi alluded to earlier, the sort of the golden child of municipal broadband in the country. So in a nutshell, what did your research find?
Yeah, so, I was in on the sort of the ground floor of fiber in Chattanooga way back in 2006 when I was invited to do the original economic impact study to see whether it made sense to bring fiber to Chattanooga. And, wrapping your brain around, the uses of fiber and so on, there was a very sparse literature in the area. So a lot of this had to be built from the ground up. You had to envision what it was. The primary usage was for the smart grid, to build out a smart grid, as Brianna has pointed out as well, and Stacy as well. But also, they realized that it was pretty easy to build out community-wide broadband from that infrastructure. And so at that point, we started to look at, what is the value there, right? So initial estimates suggested, this is in 2006, we were projecting somewhere in the neighborhood of $500 million, $500 million in terms of value, economic value, with some 2,500 jobs is what we thought over a 10-year window. So it turns out that the infrastructure was built out a lot quicker than was anticipated, partially because of the Great Recession of 2007 and 8, and some ARA funding that came by. And so they were actually, EPB was able to build out the infrastructure by 2010. So it was a very quick turnaround. And so one of the interesting tasks I was asked to conduct was a look back. He said, all right, we projected $500 million in value, 2,500 jobs. Well, what have we actually realized? So I did a 5-year look back in 2015, a 10-year look back in 2020. And my latest study will be released tomorrow, which is a 15-year look back. And give you a sense of the latest data is we are looking at over a 15-year window, an economic value of in the neighborhood of $5 to $6 billion, and job estimates in the neighborhood of 10,000 that can be attributed to the fiber infrastructure. And so over a 10-year window in 2020, also we were, looking at about $2.7 to $3 billion in value, somewhere in that neighborhood. In other words, the reality was way ahead of the projection, so to speak. We had underestimated the value of what this infrastructure could do, some of which has already come out in some of the previous guests. Where does this show up? This value shows up in, in economic development. It shows up in dollars that come to the community. I mean, not to understate this, but the smart grid alone generates significant value in terms of savings. perhaps one of the issues that was not stated earlier was savings in terms of outages prevented. And that can be quantified quite well. DOE has an ICE calculator that can tell you, if there's an outage of X number of minutes, what is the economic damage to that footprint? And if you can shave time off of the outage because you can get online, with your interrupters and all those smart things that people use, you can significantly create a lot of value for the community in that fashion alone. So there's that, and then there's just the value of high-speed broadband. I mean, we used to frequently get the question, well, what's the point in being a gigabit city and being a gig city? Who's using this, and how much bandwidth do you need? Well, today we're learning that the typical household uses about 650 gigabits of bandwidth every month. And as you and I can all relate to this, the number of connected devices at even the individual level just keeps increasing. And so our demands for bandwidth just keep increasing as well. And so, when you build it, they will come, right, as they say. And so that's sort of kind of what's happening. And Chattanooga is the beneficiary of that. A little bit later in the segment, I'll tell you a little bit of what's coming up next over the next 10 years, unless you want to hear about it now.
Well, I have a question before we do that. And it's funny, I use that same phrase with a county in a Midwestern state that I will not name yesterday. So if you build it, they will come.
Mm-hmm.
But there are struggles, right? Sometimes when I speak to cities, they're very cautious and risk averse. So when cities evaluate whether to invest in broadband, what's the biggest economic factor they overlook? And if you had to describe the role in economic development that fiber networks play in one phrase, what would it be? So what's the first is, what's the biggest factor that cities overlook that they just don't see when they're considering this?
Well, understanding the scope of the infrastructure is important, right? So for the longest time over here, it's been about the smart grid, and it's about community-wide high-speed broadband. And I think these are just hard concepts to try to put dollar numbers around, to say, well, what is the value of having high quality broadband? Well, COVID kind of woke us up a little bit to that, right? We said, we are starting to realize, well, it's not nice. It's actually an essential to have high quality broadband, for telehealth purposes and so on. So I think understanding metrics and understanding how to value what you have is probably the biggest issue. If I'm speculating, and I don't know this for a fact, but if I'm speculating, it's usually development officers who are going out and shaking the trees and saying, well, let's get this thing to my community because it can. So you're looking at how many dollars of investment you can bring in and how many jobs you can create. So there's that lens by which people look, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff, the convenience of it. In my studies, I quantify it in terms of what is called consumer surplus. There is no monetary value for some of the convenience of sitting in your armchair and ordering on Amazon, as opposed to having to deal with traffic outside to go shop at a store, right? And those kinds of things have value. And I think those tend to get left behind. I will add just a quick note over here, Gigi, which is that, and sometimes we tend to overestimate some things too. All right. And I think, especially on the job side, some of that is harder to directly link to an infrastructure. And so I personally I'm wired to where I would rather underestimate than overestimate. And so we just need to be a little bit more careful about that, I think.
Fantastic. That's great. I'll turn it back over to Sohn.
Yeah, I just listening to this conversation, I think it's a real reminder that this kind of connectivity is really an economic multiplier, a real engine of growth. But let's move into this next segment and bring back in both Stacy and Brianna as well to talk a little bit about what a smart city actually looks like. We can get specific. What does it look like in practice, and how does it change daily life? So I guess let's start with Brianna.
Yeah, so we're still leveraging the technology and it's funny because things come up frequently. Oh, it's such a good thing that we have fiber in this location, or we're so glad that we put extra conduit in. An example is that we are working on revitalizing our downtown. It needed a lot of work. Like utility infrastructure needed to be upgraded across the board. But we took the advantage of having the open streets to put in more fiber than we had already put in several years ago. And that's being leveraged to do lighting control in conjunction with our downtown business association. And so they're going to be able to leverage that connectivity to do events and revitalize the downtown and bring that economic growth back to our core part of our city. So there's lots of different ways that we're leveraging that. Another is one of our first strategic business partnerships was with a large campus that used to be an HP facility here in Loveland back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s that had closed down and had been vacant for about 25 years. And there'd been several fits and starts to try to bring that back to life. Well, because of our investment and partnership, bringing fiber to that building and working with the business owners, it's turned into this business acceleration hub. It's about 800,000 square feet. It's about 90% full at this point after about 2 years. And it is full of companies that are doing really exciting, cutting edge work. And it's all this business startup and activity. It's very vibrant. And creating new jobs and hopefully new businesses that will over time grow and become economic drivers within Loveland.
That's fascinating. Now, Stacy, give us some some smart city examples there in Huntsville as well.
Sure, Sean. I think Brianna and I probably have a lot of the same stories, and as far as how we're utilizing our fiber. So Huntsville Utilities fiber is being used to provide broadband services to city schools, and city schools and city IT heavily use our fiber. They have noted the level of reliability and service provided that we're able to provide. So that's been a great win for them. I think I mentioned traffic control cabinets earlier. We've been trying to get to all of our traffic control cabinets. Initially, we can use that when, I hate to say this, being the utility, but if there's power outage, those traffic control cabinets have to be reset. And now they can do that remotely instead of having to have an officer out there directing traffic until somebody can get out and do that. When these are fully connected, or as we get more of a widespread connection of those traffic cabinets, they can reroute traffic and retime lights so that during rush hour you don't have the backup, and because traffic patterns aren't the same all the time. And if there's any planned or unplanned event, they can manage that. They can react and manage that in real time. So if crews are having to do maintenance and shut down a lane, or if there's an accident, they can do what they can with those traffic control cabinets and help manage that. So I think Brianna mentioned this also. When schools were remote, we were able to work with them and help set up some Wi-Fi in some places like the school parking lots, so that folks could come there and download assignments. People that, luckily we had a lot of our system already built out. So a lot of folks already had high-speed internet available at their home. So they could transition to doing homeschool and working from home a lot more easily. So it did make a tough time a little less tough having all that available.
That listening to the two of you, I think is just reinforces, you hear this term future proof quite a bit as it relates to fiber networks, but I think this is kind of a demonstration both in Loveland and Huntsville of how that kind of infrastructure puts you in a place to really deal with the kind of challenges that we're dealing with now and some that are coming along. And so now, Gigi, why don't you kick off a little cross-pollination here?
Yeah, let's bring our three panelists up. And my question's a general one, and we'll go down the list. Stacy, Brianna, and Dr. Lobo. What lessons from Loveland, Huntsville, and Chattanooga can other cities take away? So let's start with Stacy.
So lessons: have a good relationship with your city. Have good maintenance programs for your electric pole infrastructure. We ended up doing a lot of maintenance during our fiber build, so our electric system is a lot stronger. Some things to think about. I think it's noteworthy. We talked about this being an upward spiral, but I want to point out one of the things that we saw. We kind of use underground locates as a gauge on how much construction activity is going on. And from 6 months from the time that we announced our partnership with Google Fiber, 6 months later, our locate requests from communications companies had increased tenfold at least, from under 200 a month to over 2,000 a month. So it immediately kickstarted other communications companies jumping on the bandwagon and building fiber infrastructure and immediately getting better broadband services to the residents of Huntsville. So that was something we should have anticipated but didn't. But just any initiative sparks that competition and creativity. We've attracted data centers like DC Blocks and Simple Helix, which in turn attract other businesses to get into this upward spiral. When we decided to build this, we weren't necessarily ready organizationally to handle all the other jobs that were going to come along with it and handling all the inquiries that we were going to get. So I would have built out our staff a little bit more sooner, but we're doing fine now.
I love that point that you guys building actually drove other companies to compete. And that just benefits everybody in the community. So I think it's a really important point. Let's go to Brianna. Same question. What are the lessons that, if you were teaching a bunch of cities interested in doing what you've done or doing what Chattanooga or Huntsville has done, what would you teach them? What were the lessons they should take away?
Well, I think Stacy had a lot of excellent points. We had similar situation with locates, but I think that for us, it was when we were building consensus, there was also a strong need to make sure that this was treated like a business. And because we are a full retail operation, we're not partnering with a private entity. We're directly engaged with our customers, providing them a service. And so the mindset that cities typically take for like order taking and this plays well into this business, but then there's also the aspect of we're competing with other entities that are in the community. And so that mindset at a leadership level and within the whole city organization is really, really important, and helping our citizens, our residents of Loveland understand that we're part of the community, but we're also a lot of very nuanced conversations about what is it like to own a community-owned broadband network.
Great. Dr. Lobo, close us out on this one.
Utilities.
You're a professor, so you can teach, right? So go ahead, give us a lesson.
Well, I'll tell you what, I have learned a lot of lessons in this process of doing these studies, right? I mean, utilities are supposed to be boring entities that don't do very much of anything, right? And I have been so impressed by how innovative the utility in town has been. I mean, they were going into spaces that the private sector was not interested in going into, which was this market was too small. And to reiterate a point that was made earlier, they have actually been the catalyst for competition in the area. Not only our prices per megabit, if you will, dropped sharply, but the quality of the product, the broadband product, has gone up sharply as well. And so it's interesting to me. I think in terms of a lesson, if you will, one of the reasons for the success, I think, is just the immense amount of trust that the entity has in the community, which is unusual when you think about it. I mean, the quality of service gets high rave reviews all the time. And I think, you might not link it directly to fiber or the infrastructure, but it speaks to the entity that is bringing that to you. And so initially, the 2006 study suggested it needed a 35% take rate to break even on this project. 70% of households in Chattanooga have EPB service, and 40% of businesses do. And so I think, it's knocked it out of the park. And it's kind of, I think, a really good model and a really good business plan can be actually a very, very lucrative venture for the community, is my two cents on that.
That's great. Can I just ask Brianna and Stacy also what your take rates are?
Pulse is in the mid 40s for our community. And we've actually been able to partner with some of our neighboring areas. So the county, so moving out into unincorporated areas, neighboring towns as well, that want also to bring that level of quality and service to their communities too. So it's been really great to be able to share that part and partner with other organizations.
It's wonderful that you've been expanding. That's great. And Stacy?
So as far as our take rate, since we're not the retail provider, that would be Google's customers, and they don't share that information. But we do also have dark fiber lease customers, and we've got maybe a couple dozen. Not everybody wants dark fiber, but it is something that we've had some pretty significant interest in.
So another source of income, is what you're saying, another source of revenue.
Exactly.
It's really important. Okay, I'll turn it back over to Sohn.
So yeah, and just listening to this conversation, I think it reminds me that this smart infrastructure isn't just like futuristic; it's happening now. And speaking of the future, we are going to bring out our next and final guest, who is super interesting. We had him on our Connect This, a live stream show that our director Christopher Mitchell hosts a few times a month. And I thought it was just such a fascinating discussion that we should share, a bit of what he's doing now. And so let's bring out Paul Dickinson, who is the founder and principal of Smart Infrastructure Solutions. Hey, Paul, how you doing?
Hey, Sean, thanks for the kudos. And I want to start by thanking both Gigi and yourself for inviting me here. This is a great panel. I mean, I see all the pieces. I get excited about this stuff. I have a hard time sleeping at night, which is why I had to surround myself with fiber behind here. I've been playing with fiber for 35 years. And I've been listening to Chris Mitchell, following ILSR for years. I want to kind of shake a paradigm here, which is what I'm enjoying doing these days. Fiber, as we all know, is about reducing the digital divide. It's about enabling communities to prosper, right, with the symmetrical broadband. And we all know that there's, a little bit of controversy going on right now about just what the value of fiber is relative to other higher latency type broadband communications. We're on the cusp of something that's super exciting. So even though this is my personal business, I'm very involved in Fiber Broadband Association, electric utility industries, transportation. And I see a synergy and an awakening that's happening in the communities right now. And Dr. Bento, Dr. Lobo, it's very much a pleasure to meet you, because I'd like to collaborate with you after this about what I'm going to talk about. So the fiber, I've always been a huge advocate for overbuild of conduit and providing dark fiber, even dark conduit for a community to thrive and prosper by having overlays and becoming autonomous and such. So that's all been great. And fiber to the home has been, growing for many, many years. I was around the very beginning, and now we're really seeing the fruits of our labors. What people aren't realizing, and I'll chat about this now, is the fiber has an entirely different purpose that I would say 99.5% or more of your audience is not aware of. The fiber that's in the ground right now, or that we're about to put in the ground, in addition to being a source for providing our broadband needs by, connecting point A to point B, can act as an entire continuous sensor under the ground or aerially, and provide even more economic value, even more life safety, even more value to a municipality. And I'll try to describe this briefly. I don't know exactly how much time I have. I'll try to be succinct. Maybe we can follow up some other time on some detail. But the fiber that's in the ground right now, adjacent to utilities, the fiber that's running roadside, the fiber that's making our communities thrive with respect to broadband. If you just use alternative hardware and software that fully exists now, that's used on our nation's borders and that's used to monitor some utilities currently, you're converting that fiber into something that's by using distributed fiber optic sensing, a continuous sensor passively that doesn't require fiber under the ground or aerially that can do amazing things. So I get excited because I tell people I think we're in the beginning of a perfect storm situation here. You know, communities are thriving. They're building out their broadband. We've heard from wonderful speakers today talking about that. But we're about to undergo a revolution in the U.S. where people are realizing aging infrastructure needs to be upgraded. You know, data centers are being built. They all need to be interconnected by broadband. The power utility grid needs to be tremendously upgraded to support our needs going forward. So wherever there is fiber now, if it happens to be adjacent to assets that you have, you care about, and wherever, more importantly, perhaps where we're about to build fiber, if we would make sure we not only look at building out fiber for broadband, but also to monitor, protect, provide life safety and situational awareness of our underground assets. The way this works succinctly is either on a temperature basis or an acoustic basis. Things that happen in the ground, such as people literally using excavators, either appropriately or inappropriately, cutting up infrastructure because our maps are actually quite poor for what we built over the last 34 years. $30 billion a year occurs every year in direct and indirect damages in the US alone based upon cutting up infrastructure. That causes life safety events, that causes services to go down. It's just amazing. What we're on the cusp of is the realization with technology that we can actually use one dark fiber that's in a cable or conduit, along with many, many others that are typically there, and use this and leverage this within a municipality to provide situational awareness of what's happening in the ground. This is an ROI opportunity for municipalities at a municipal level where you have many utilities typically in a right-of-way. You can actually monitor all the utilities in the right-of-way with that one dark fiber and provide insight that could either be monetized by an ISP provider or a municipality could lower their costs over time. So I'm going to stop there. I hope that gives you a flavor for it, and I'll be happy to answer any questions, Gigi or Sean, you want to throw at me.
Sure, Gigi, you can jump in at any time. But one question that I did want to ask you is, what are some of the more exciting pilots or prototypes that you're seeing right now, and what might other cities learn from them?
Okay, so as I said, it's been used for a couple of decades, so it's a proven technology. It's used on our nation's borders to monitor and protect. It's used along midstream oil right now because when things go bad with midstream oil pipelines, that's not a good day. It can actually has the sensitivity to detect not only intrusion type events, but also minute leaks before they become catastrophic environmental hazards. One of the things I think is most exciting right now is we have bridges across the U.S. that are aging. We all hear in the news bridges, collapsing occasionally. We have situations where we're trying to justify fiber in rural routes with very low pass rates, right? The economics associated with it. What I'm all about is trying to marry combined economics. For example, I'll just give you one example. A right-of-way typically has, in many cases, gas utilities, electric utilities. Maybe it's running roadside. Maybe it's running along rural roads where DOTs across the U.S. right now are putting fiber to connect the citizens and do the backhaul of the 5G and the wireless. That presents an economic opportunity for a municipality or a utility to actually not only get the fiber further than they could economically justify based upon the pass rate, but to monitor a rural road for accidents, for traffic in a cost-effective manner and to monitor the utilities for damage. I keep wanting to go back to utilities. I mean, everyone's talking about AI and data center interconnects and all the power that's going to be needed, right? If we're going to build out this infrastructure, we need to make it resilient. And the easiest way to make it resilient, those of you who know outside plant, 70% of the cost is when you first dig up. So if a utility is building out its route right now, put in the extra conduit, put in the extra fiber now, connect with the Fiber Broadband Association, which I'm a part of, and we can show you how economically, in an accounting basis, you could actually leverage that fiber for even more ROI. It's one thing to say you have dark fiber, one thing to say you have dark conduit, but imagine if you could use your fiber not just for broadband, but for this entirely new purpose.
So, Paul, I'd love to, number one, I love your passion. It's great just to see how excited you are about this technology. How widespread is the use of the fiber sensing technology? And to the extent that, cities maybe, might hesitate using it, why do they hesitate?
The number one issue, Gigi, is awareness. People just aren't aware. When I give talks and panels and such, the audience just isn't aware that fiber could do something other than broadband. So the widespread efficacy varies based upon vertical. It's growing in midstream oil. There are even standards out there. It's for security, border security, or just perimeter security. It's used in quite a broad way. Where it's emerging, I think, is actually the most exciting area. It's the convergence of telecom, the convergence of utilities, and the convergence of transportation. And when I say transportation, I mean not just roadside, I mean rail. So that, in my opinion, is all the small use cases have been done by individual companies. It's been vetted. What I'm trying to do, along with the organizations I represent, is I'm trying to raise it to a higher level, where folks like the municipalities we have involved in your audience and ILSR's audience realize, oh my God, I could actually do something entirely different if I make my route not only satisfy my broadband needs, but also protect my assets. So it's growing. I just came from a conference, the Fiber Optic Sensing Association annual meeting. There are nonprofits like the Alliance for Innovation Infrastructure that are heavily looking into it. I encourage you to look at their website, aai.org. Again, the Fiber Optic Sensing Association. You can reach out to me. It's in the standards bodies being reviewed right now. But even before the standards bodies eventually approve this, I'll give you one good example. Maybe I'll leave you with this example. So we're all familiar. I heard someone on this panel talk about damage prevention, and we're all familiar with call centers. So there's a very visionary call center in Texas 811. They have realized that as you, and by the way, the Common Ground Alliance, another organization I'm involved with, realizes this. As you scale with your builds, which we're about to do, damage scales, life safety events scale. So what can you do about it? You can adhere to better protocols, which is critical, or you can also put in technology that has the only live detection monitoring capabilities. And so that's happening right now, is call centers across the US are integrating this or planning to integrate this into their systems so that as we do this tremendous build, we can actually live protect our infrastructure from damage.
Thanks, Paul. And again, if anybody wants to know anything more about fiber optic sensing, Paul Dickinson is the guy to contact. It's the killer app, it seems to me.
It's the next thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
The killer app. Yes.
I'm going to turn it back over to Sohn, and we'll then start our final segment.
Yes. Yeah. I just listening to Paul. I mean, I'm just fascinated by this technology and its broad uses. And it reminds me that these kind of investments, if you're going to be a modern connected city, it's not really optional. It's really about preparation. And so that's something that strikes me from listening to this conversation. And so we've heard a lot about fiber infrastructure and the benefits and the economic multiplier effects and all of the smart things it allows communities to do. And, Gigi, you alluded to earlier about, many communities being a bit squeamish or cautious about making these kind of investments. So I think this last segment is a really important part of the discussion, which is about the cost of doing nothing. So Gigi, why don't you kick us off on that front?
Yeah. So let's talk about the consequences of inaction, and this is for everybody. So just chime in when you want to. So if a city chooses not to invest, what does doing nothing look like 5 years from now? Why don't we just throw that open to anybody who wants to answer that? Or maybe let me just put it another way. What are the hidden costs of doing nothing that communities should be aware of? The ones that don't necessarily show up on the balance sheet.
So Gigi,
Well, I'll give you a nerdy answer to this because that's the world I live in. But the nerdy answer is this value that people like me have calculated. Well, you don't have that, so that's the cost of not doing something, is what you're giving up, right? But you also, in some ways, forego the opportunity to get on the forward-moving bandwagon, right? So to give you an idea, the next thing, we are transitioning from gig city to quantum city here in Chattanooga, right? And so Chattanooga has the first commercial quantum network in the country. And so we have firms that are coming here to test out devices and processes on this network. And it's a bit of a mind-boggling concept when you think about all that quantum can do. But it's very real, and it's a real business, and there's lots and billions upon billions of dollars that is in that space right now. And so it was an easy transition for Chattanooga to go into that space because of what they already had technologically here. So I give you that as an example that can be a significant value driver going forward.
Anybody else want to weigh in on that question?
I'll weigh in a little bit. So communities do compete with each other for economic growth. And so attracting businesses, which we kind of already talked about, if you don't have the infrastructure that the new businesses of the future need, you're going to be left behind. And it also, so one of the things that we're doing, looking to the future, is we are greening our grid. So we own our generation and transmission provider, and we are launching what's called a virtual power plant. We are going to be more than 80% renewable energies by the end of the decade, which is coming right around the corner. And the only way that that's going to be possible is because the four owner communities of Platte River have communication that they've built out, and that we are now leveraging that to actively monitor the grid, actively react in real time to changes in load and changes to weather and what have you. And so that leveraging it for the next step is something that we wouldn't have been able to do otherwise.
Yeah, Gigi, I'll mention a couple things as well. So I agree with everything Brianna said, that economic development, and certainly we've seen more activity there over the last 10 years. And maybe it's because of this fiber initiative, maybe not, but I think it's, like Sean's mentioned a couple times, the economic multiplier. It's all about that. But from a customer standpoint, really, whether you're a utility or any other business, customer expectations continue to go up. And they expect more, they expect fewer outages, better quality. I think you could probably go back 50 years, and if people had power most of the time, they were probably happy. And now if voltage drops a little bit, people are getting maybe alarms on their UPS, or the expectations have just really skyrocketed, and we've got to continue to implement and embrace new technology to keep up with that and be able to meet customer demands.
My quick comment is that you have brownfield opportunity where you already have fiber in place. And if you're about to build out, I have had other municipalities approach me and say, I don't want to leave money on the table. I want to design this in now because that's the cost-effective time to do it. So literally, by looking at your route locations more carefully than you would have just for broadband, and considering and being aware of what this technology can do, you can maximize your citizen safety and your ROI now, and you won't regret it 5 years from now when you learn about the technology.
Sean, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just, it's sort of a follow-on to this discussion, and it's about really how do you convince skeptics who kind of see reliable and affordable citywide broadband infrastructure, believe it or not, as still as a nice to have instead of a necessity. And that's for anybody, particularly Brianna and Stacy.
And if I could sort of tag on, what I hear a lot is we can't afford it, right? So how do you kind of address that? That's part of the skepticism, right? Is, oh, we don't want to, we want to hurt our bond rating. We can't afford it. Like, what do you say to people like that?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we dealt with a lot when we were trying to figure out what direction we wanted to go in Loveland. And, for good or for worse, COVID really brought everything into perspective about it's not just, cat videos and online shopping. It's actually things that people use, fill out job applications, work remotely. I mean, it is so much bigger than what the internet used to be. And I think bringing them along and helping them, actually see some of the other ways that maybe they're not using the internet, but other people in their community are. And those like anecdotal stories and that ground swelling of community voice that can help challenge those types of feelings. That's at least how we were able to approach it.
Anybody else real quickly? Go ahead, Stacy.
So, in Huntsville, again, we were really lucky. We have very forward-thinking city leadership, so that was very helpful. We didn't have to convince them, but I think for anybody else, at this point, there are success stories that you can point to, and it's only going to get more expensive to do later. It's inevitable. But at least there are some success stories where you can look and say, look, Loveland did this, Huntsville did this, and what's happened to those communities after the implementation.
Great. Look, I really do think that this conversation does demonstrate that the cost of doing nothing isn't abstract. It's visible. So thanks for that. We only have 3 minutes left. Then there's a bunch of really great questions, and maybe what we can do, Sean, is maybe send some of these questions to the speakers. Maybe they can answer some of them and we can post them or something, because there's so many good ones. But let me just ask one right now, because I think this is interesting. To what extent is the experience in Chattanooga tied to the electric utility? What portion of the benefits accrue to a city that has a separate investor-owned utility unrelated to the FTTP? So maybe Dr. Lobo, you can answer that question.
The fiber optic infrastructure was brought to Chattanooga by the utility, and so its value is tied to that. Way back when there was some pushback on whether the utility should be getting into that line of work and whether they should be staying out of it. But at the time, there was no private entity that wanted to drop fiber in Chattanooga in a community-wide manner. So if I'm understanding the question correctly, the value is primarily attributable to the utility because it's the utility who dropped the fiber in the community. Am I missing something here, Gigi?
I don't know, because it's Randy Lunig that asked the question and I can't talk to him, but that sounds like a very good answer to me. So I'll ask one more question and then we'll probably have to close. So this is for Brianna from Drew Pappas. How's the Timnath build out going? Can you go into more detail on how that partnership with another town works? Who owns the infrastructure there, Loveland or Timnath?
Yeah, so this is what we're calling a public-public partnership, and so Pulse owns the infrastructure, and we are partnering with the town of Timnath. They are helping finance that build out in their community. So they're a little town just to the east of us in Fort Collins. So that and they get benefit back because we're going to revenue share to with the customers that they pick up or we pick up and provide service to in their community. So it's a pretty cool concept, and we're really excited to be able to partner with another community like that. And it's kind of a win-win situation. We get to expand our footprint and share in that community broadband, and then also help another community with connectivity and also revenue share.
Fantastic. Well,
Excellent.
we're almost at the end here, so I'm going to turn it back over to my co-host. This was an amazing conversation, and
It was, and it always just sort of scratches the surface.
I want to
Yes.
send this to every single community that's thinking about doing this and saying, here's why you should do it. So go ahead, Sean,
That's right.
take us home.
Yes. So yeah, just want to thank all of our guests who gave some tremendous insight. This live stream will be posted on our YouTube channels, so folks can go back and look. We'll have links and some follow-up stories, and definitely reach out and contact folks. And just one last little plug I want to say before we leave, which is when Brianna mentioned that public-public partnership. We this week put out a in-depth report that our senior researcher Jessica Auer wrote about the 19 small towns in the Berkshires of Massachusetts engaging in these public-public partnerships to build out fiber infrastructure across those communities. It's a fabulous story, and really I think a model that other communities can look at. So with that, I really want to also thank Gigi once again, the American Association for Public Broadband, a great organization for municipalities who are interested in this to join, and continue to look for more. We likely have another webinar coming up in January. So thank you all for being here, each of our guests, and please visit our websites, aapb.us or communitynetworks.org for more information on these topics and for future events.
Thanks, everybody.